Welcome to I'm Not Joking, the podcast where a behavioral scientist examines what it's like to live a humorous life. Glimpse into the lives of the funniest people in entertainment, business, and science as your host, Dr. Peter McGraw, explores their habits, motivations, and secrets to success. Get ready to fire up your brain and your funny bone. Now, here's your host.
Welcome to I'm Not Joking, the podcast that looks at the lives of funny people. I'm Peter McGraw. Today's guest is Norm Laviolette. Norm is the owner of Improv Asylum and Laugh Boston. Welcome, Norm.
Hey, man, thanks for having me. And you nailed the name, too.
I know, I had to check it.
It stresses everybody out. It really does. It stresses everybody out. And it's funny, I get stressed out on names, less on the pronunciation, because I know that people struggle with my name, and I don't really care. But I get like a weird mental block. I can know somebody's name, it can be like, John Smith, and I have to say it like 10 times, because all of a sudden if I'm introducing somebody, I'll be like, John, son of a bitch, what's your last name? So you nailed the name thing. Good job.
Happy to do that. So this is an unusual podcast because this is totally impromptu. Basically, I'm using your gear and your tech support because you just interviewed me, and then we literally switched seats.
Yes.
And now I'm doing my podcast with your stuff. So thank you for doing this.
And psychologically, it does feel better to switch seats, to now go into being the person that's being interviewed. It's a weird thing, but it works.
It does. So if you did not own comedy clubs, and you were not a comedy club performer, an improv performer, stand-up, etc., what would you be doing with your life?
I was on track. What I was very interested in pursuing was a career in the Foreign Service. That's what I wanted to do. That's what I thought I was going to do. I went to school at the University of Massachusetts at Amherst.
Okay.
I was just very much interested and intrigued by that. I have an uncle that is in the Foreign Service, so I think a lot of that was driven by his experiences there, and it always seemed like, he's stationed all around the world and doing that. I knew I didn't want to do anything normal.
Okay.
That was the key to it. And I wasn't smart enough or talented enough. I'm underselling that. I wasn't mature enough to learn how to be talented enough to do more important things. But I was like, but that's based on, to a degree, personality, and I always had that. So I'm like, I think I can work this into the Foreign Service in some way, shape, or form.
What the hell is the Foreign Service?
Typically, it's the diplomatic corps, things of that nature. Certainly, there can be elements of CIA and stuff like that, but it wasn't even that, because you have to go through the military on that. For me, it was like the diplomatic corps and what's out there, and in particular, I was interested in the security end of the diplomatic corps.
I love the idea of thinking about you doing diplomacy. So for listeners, it's probably important to know that I know Norm from a cold email.
Correct.
So Norm heard about the humor code, sent me an email, and I get a decent number of very nice messages from folks. And so usually what I end up doing is some Googling to see what they're up. I was like, oh, this guy seems legit.
That's the beauty of things nowadays. Is like everybody checks everybody's credits. So like, who's this maniac?
Exactly.
Seems like they got some credits. I'll email them back.
So in the spirit of improv, I think you wanted to chat, just to talk about this stuff, and I think part of it is the appeal of the humor code and our foreign travels. And I had been planning a humor hackathon at Boulder Startup Week, and I was like, oh well. Hey, Norm, if you want to come out, I need a judge. I can't pay you, but it's going to be a fun week. It'll be a good time. And all the hotels were all booked up and stuff.
Yeah, you were really making it sound super appealing. I can't pay you. There are no hotels.
And I was like, well, you can crash at my place if you want. And you're like, yeah, sure. Which it was great. We had a good time, and the hackathon was good. I actually did a hackathon at this content marketing conference.
It was great, and I had never participated in anything like that, and so for me, it was fun to go out there. It's also the embodiment of I think how you're trained as an improvisational actor, right? The concept of yes and, which is yes, taking in the idea and being willing to go somewhere. Well, it's all well and good when you talk about it in theory. Theory's bullshit. How do you put it into practice? And to me, that was an opportunity of, I wanted to learn and experience more. I had the yes from you. I had to put the and on and get my ass on a plane and go see what this is going to be about. Good, bad, or indifferent, you're going to get a story out of it.
Yes.
You know, if it's a good experience, then we create a relationship. If it's a bad experience, I get a story. So either way, I'm like, I'll go.
It's funny what a small world it is, because here I gave a talk today at your club. We're at Laugh Boston right now at a conference that you were emceeing and giving a talk at. Yeah, I think the world of comedy can become quite small.
Well, and I would say not only the world of comedy, but just the world, if you're willing to embrace some things and say yes and go out there. I'm one of those weird thinkers where I'm like there's no such thing as a coincidence, right? And I say that for effect to a degree, but on the other hand, I do believe it, because it's like luck, right? Everyone wants to say like, oh man, you're so lucky, and that can chafe somebody like me quite a bit, because I'm not lucky. Now I'm fortunate. Don't get me wrong. There's a big difference.
Yeah.
But you gotta get in front of your luck. Right? That's how coincidences happen. Like, you're not going to get lucky unless you get out in front of it. I always say luck is like a train, right? You're not going to get hit by a train unless you get in front of that damn train.
Right.
Odds are it's not going to wildly go off the tracks and run you over, right? And so, to me, when something like that, these coincidences happen, well, it doesn't surprise me at all, because we connected, we put it into motion, we each took a chance to establish a relationship. So the world kind of is small enough where it tends to bring it back around, in my experience.
Yeah, so I want to talk to you about this idea about what the world can learn from comedy. So I've been sort of noodling on this idea, and I gave a talk related to it today. And so I feel like the yes and I think yes and is really critical for living an interesting life. And frankly, that's really my goal more than anything else.
Same with me. It's when you said the idea of like, it's funny to imagine me as a diplomat.
Yes, but that's an interesting life.
It's an interesting life, and if you think about it, that's still what I'm pursuing. Like I'm pursuing that. I'm pursuing that, but I'm pursuing it now through comedy.
Mm-hmm. So I think the yes and, I don't want to say it's tired, but it's well known.
It's tired, dude. It is so tired. It is, Ari, it's tired. It's tired. It's trite in this. Not saying it's not valid and true. It's
just people know it. A lot of people talk about it. It's in books. It's there.
It jumps the shark, right?
Yeah.
And I remember giving because look, I give presentations and I talk about it and use it as well. And I remember like when somebody beat me to it, I was like, somebody like some crappy like insurance company, and they're like, yeah, yes, and right. I'm like, oh man, I gotta change this shtick up. But so I get it. It's tired in the sense that it's in the vernacular. So what's the next kind of?
Yeah. So what are the things? So you live in a world of comedy, but you're also a businessman.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And so, would you describe, if you were to break down your life, what percentage of your life is business and what percentage of your life is comedy?
Now within my career, it's far more the business of comedy, right? So it's running these clubs and these operations, or should I say, creating these clubs and these opportunities for other people to run them, because I don't do a damn thing.
Okay.
I'm surrounded by people that do what they do really well. What I do in both the business and the comedy end of it, and so while it is mostly business, but I feel like it's intersected very much for me, is I still create. I just create now on a different level. I'm not creating nightly on stage. That's not my life. That's not my job. And yet I still use those same skills to say to myself, well, what's that next thing? Where's the pattern recognition? Where can we go? What can I do? Asking those questions. And then the skill set that I have is, for whatever reasons, I have the ability to jump on an idea when I like it.
Okay.
That's what I do. If I have an idea, I jump on it, I like it, and I tend to ride it out and see where it goes.
What's an example of that?
So I get fascinated by things, right?
Okay.
And it's not just comedy. Like, I get obsessive about stuff. So I got something hooked in my brain, right? At Improv Asylum or at Laugh Boston or at any comedy club or whatever, there's items in the lost and found.
Okay. All right. I already like this idea.
Okay. It's great. This is, I'm not kidding you, man. This is going to be my $1 billion. It's going to get me out of this very tough trade, which is the comedy business. All right, so historically, right, we would do this thing like when I was directing more and shows like that. Every now and then we'd have the cast and we'd go lost and found shopping, right? Okay. We go lost and found. You grab the stuff. It's predominantly scarves and gloves from here in Boston and some sunglasses and umbrellas. Man, you're just umbrella rich, right? And then there's sometimes you're like, that's a pretty nice thing. But I got hooked in my mind, right? I just kept thinking about this. If Improv Asylum has all this stuff every month,
okay,
and Lap Boston has this stuff, and what do we do with it, right? Staff goes through it, takes what they want, you throw the rest out.
Okay.
But I got hooked in my mind. I'm like, well, if we have all this stuff, every restaurant in the north end of Boston, that's where the club is, has this stuff.
Okay.
And they do the same thing. So I'm like, so let's test it, right?
Okay.
And I know all the restaurants, so I would go to the restaurant next to me. I'm like, hey, John at Mother Anna's, what do you do with your lost and found stuff? And immediately everyone's like, well, no, I know you take it, right? The staff takes it, but once that's done, what do you do? They're like, I don't know, we throw it out.
Right.
I'm like, would you give it to me?
Okay.
He's like, absolutely. He's like, okay, fine. So every restaurant and every club has it. Every restaurant and club would give this to me. If every restaurant and club in Boston will give it to me, every restaurant, bar, and club in the United States will give it to me. If every restaurant and bar and club has it, so does every sports venue.
Yes.
So then I went out to the sports venues that I know. And I'm like, would you give me your stuff? They're like, oh my God, you would take all of our shit from our minor league baseball stadium?
Right.
They're like, absolutely. Okay, so you iterate up one more time, right? And then you go to yourself, well, would the hotel give it to me? Laugh Boston's in a hotel.
Right.
So you go out to the hotel and you say, hey, hotel, would you give me your lost and found? What do you do? And they're like, I know, you take it. But after that, they're like, yeah, we'll give you the stuff. So then
you don't have to feel bad about throwing it away.
Right, you're not throwing it away. And I iterated all the way up with the idea. I went all the way to a unnamed professional sports team.
Okay.
And because they get super sensitive about it, so I'm not even going to say.
Does it rhyme with Geltics?
It more rhymes with smallpox. And I said, theoretically, and they're like, yeah, we would work something out.
Sure, right.
And so I became obsessed with this. Like, well, that's free sourced material.
Okay.
That you could create. Even if 90% of it was crap, 10% of it is good, and 10% of it could then be used. You're repurposing it. It's
turning stuff into rags, and there's industrial uses of this stuff.
And creating its own store, right?
Yeah.
Creating its own. So I tested it. Like I have like people leave like beautiful North Face jackets and stuff like that, and so it's this whole concept that I'm working on, and I follow it, and I know how this ends. This ends with a giant warehouse full of shit that I can't do anything with. And I accept that. I accept it. But that's a thing where like I create and follow the thread and I enjoy it so much.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, what you just described is not unlike a comedian working on a bit obsessively.
Yeah. It's the same thing.
Same thing, I think. So how do you see your comedy life and your business professional life? Like, what else have you stolen? So clearly that the be able to focus and to think on something no one else is thinking about. Although it's once you point it out, it feels obvious.
Right.
Where are the other things that you're mining your comedy background to help you as a professional?
Appropriate risk taking.
Okay, tell me more about that.
That becomes huge. You can't do comedy without taking risks. Just the fact that you would either sign up for an improv class or step on stage for an open mic, right? Mm-hmm. That is the risk. So you can't do it without risk.
Okay.
When you perform,
but you say appropriate risk taking. So tell me about that.
So appropriate risk taking is if you're going to do comedy, you're probably going to find an open mic or an improv class. So there's risk that you're doing the comedy. Mm-hmm. It's appropriate because you're stepping up on that stage, on the open mic stage that allows it. It may be less appropriate if you showed up at the nursing home, right? It may be way better and maybe more appreciated at the nursing home, but that's the appropriateness. And so, everybody thinks that being an entrepreneur or even a performer is all about wild risk taking. It's not so much about wild risk taking. Mm-hmm. It's about identifying what you think is a risk worth jumping at. And that's what I think what I call appropriate risk is that you got to take risks, but then they're not just. Everybody thinks they're wild swings. They're not wild swings.
Yeah, I agree with this. I like this idea. So a lot of smart folks in the world of startups and so on, everybody celebrates failing and failing fast, but there's a lot of people who push back on that idea, and what they talk about is no. You want to limit your downside risk. So you want small failures with big upside. Yeah. And so taking an improv class, I think, fits that, right? The upside of taking an improv class is huge. It can change your life. The downside of it is very minor.
Sure.
Right? It's like, it's a bit uncomfortable, and you have some bad days, but you have plenty of good days as a result of it.
Well, you're absolutely right, and it's the same within the business of comedy, right? It's you then start to assess, use that same skill, and as I assess the growth of our companies and our brands, I look at things, right? And I look at things, and I assess the opportunity, and each one comes with a risk because it's
the risk of a full warehouse full of crap,
which is absolutely what
it's
I'm going to have.
It's not a huge risk, though.
If you think about it, it isn't, because I acquired all that stuff for free.
Right.
So if I have a warehouse full of infinity scarves, right. I'll make friends. And so there is that. So I'll give you a real world example within the comedy industry, and I'll give you a scoop.
Oh, that's great.
It's super dramatic when I say it like that, right? So we have Improv Asylum here in Boston. An opportunity was. I became aware of an opportunity to bring Improv Asylum to a new market very recently, and it was, and so it came to be that there was a theater that presented itself as being open in New York City. Okay. Well, that's a big move for any company. I wasn't really looking.
If you can make it there, you can make it anywhere.
Can get so much stuff for your free Lost and Found. This is all up front.
9 million people.
Oh, I can't even. You don't even know. I'm going to be the low rent Jeff Bezos. I'm going to be the low rent dirty Amazon. Right. That's what I'm going to be. And so it was made. I was made aware that this theater was available. Right.
Okay.
So using my instincts, I'm like, well, the next step is to go see it.
Okay.
So I immediately went down to check it out. And I'm like, well, okay, this theater is right here in New York City. It was, up until very recently, a thriving improvisational comedy theater.
Okay.
Which is already that's my business, which is what I do. And it was available. So I'm like, well, we got to try to explore this.
Okay.
And so, we jumped in and we got into the negotiations with the landlord and stuff like that. And I said, we're doing it. Because as I looked at everything, from the location, the opportunity, the finances, the rent, there's a lot of risk. It doesn't mean it's going to work. But in the grand scheme of what I know economically on how these places are run, I'm like, I think there's a real good chance that this will be a go. And not only do I think it's a good chance that it'll be a go, the upside
that's it.
to being in New York and all of the other elements of my business, the corporate training and the speaking stuff like that comes out of the storefront, I'm like, that's a swing I gotta take.
Right.
And so we did it, and I'm signing a lease on the New York City Theater tomorrow. And we will be opening an Improv Asylum in New York City, hopefully sometime in the fall.
So that's great. It probably around the time this podcast will be coming out.
All right,
that's perfect.
That's great.
So a couple quick things before we wrap.
Yeah.
So earlier today, you and I were having a conversation about, we're both in suits today.
Yeah.
We both look good.
Yeah, man, we are sharp.
And you were talking about how when you perform, you will often dress up.
Yes.
And one thing that I noticed about you and like about you is you're sort of, although you have this fun, feisty side, you have this very professional side to you. And we started talking about how like the best comedians are actually the most professional.
Sure.
They may seem like the least professional people on stage, the way they dress, the way they behave, but they're the most professional behind the scenes. So can you give me a little bit of insight as someone who works with the comedians, the best and worst in that way?
It's a job. If you want to do this as a job, right? It is a job, and you have to treat it as such. At Improv Asylum, for example, when our actors go on stage, what we call our main stage cast, that's the main cast that everybody's trying to get into, they all wear suits. Okay, and what the reason for that is, it tells your audience that we take this stuff very seriously.
It's like the Blues Brothers.
Absolutely, right? That it is that, and we jump around, we make ourselves look stupid and stuff like that. But the point is that we show you that we take what we're about to do for you very seriously, and we want you to take it seriously as well. It's a job. And it's psychologically, it tells the audience, they're like, oh, they must be pretty good. They're in suits. I mean, it's a simple psychological play, right? And it changes the expectation, because you can have those same people and do the same thing in matching T-shirts. But there's a judgment that's going to be made on that. Like, oh, this is corny. This is hokey. Now contrast that with, right? So you have our main stage show. We're in our suits, right? And we do that 7:30 and 10 o'clock on a Saturday. At midnight, we do a show called Raunch. And the idea of that show is that we will take all those nasty, awful suggestions that are yelled at us throughout the night that we typically wouldn't maybe take because we want to keep the show up. And we're like, you want to be nasty? You don't know what nasty is.
This is the time.
And we'll do it. And in that show, and we even say it, as we set up the show to the audience, because you can stay for free if you went to the 10 o'clock or the 7:30. We say, and at midnight, we go back, we take our suits off, we drink, and we take your nasty shows. And so we show you this transformation into professionals, into what it is we're doing. And it really psychologically tells you that whatever it is you're doing, we take it seriously, so you give us more respect out of it.
Yeah, that's fine. Now, what about behind the scenes? So your most successful comedians, the folks who treat it like a job, what are they doing interacting with you and your staff, not when they're on stage, but when they're just coming and going and doing, like, is there anything that stands out or a story that comes to mind about?
If you look at, so change that over to Laugh Boston, right? Because now that's a different animal. We don't control the labor, as it were, there. You have all the independent contractors, which are the stand-up comedians coming in. And by and large, the ones that are successful are the ones that show up when they're supposed to show up, that, are treating the staff and everybody professionally and appropriately, that come in and are supposed to be where they're supposed to be when they're supposed to be there, right? It's their job. They're showing up. The people that we don't book back, I mean, we kind of use the asshole rule. It's like, life's too short to work with assholes, and so if you come
back, lots of funny people to choose from,
and there always will be. There's like, it doesn't just stop next year,
right?
It's always coming up, and so it's the people that treat it like a job, and they treat the people around them like you would any other coworker.
Yeah, I think that's right. So last question: the secret to success, everybody knows, can't seem to do. What is it? Oh,
I thought you were about to tell me. I was like,
no.
Finally. Finally.
No. I'm asking for you.
Yeah. Okay. All right. That's disappointing. I guess, and we're all biased to our own experiences and life experiences, stuff like that. For me, it's been the idea of pain tolerance. Right? Which is, how much pain can you accept in pursuit of your goal and not quitting? Like, it's very easy to say never give up, right? But I think it's not just that.
Actually, I think that's bad advice too. Sometimes it's smart to give up.
Oh, you should quit. I mean, I say it all the time, right? If you don't get cast in something, like at Improv Asylum, or if you don't get the show that you want, I will say to actors, I'm like, if you quit, good, because that means that you shouldn't be doing this, and you'll probably be happier doing something else, and it clears the way for those that should be doing this, right? So I go back to, it's your pain tolerance. If you can fight through, the psychological, sometimes physical, right? The pain that you have to push through, and that can be like, I'm not going to spend as much time with my kids at this point.
Yes, trade-offs. That's right. Yes.
And if you can get through the pain tolerance and push through that, because you will get through it. And oddly enough, that weird thing that feels painful starts to feel pleasurable.
I think any creative task has that element to it.
And when you can push through the pain element of it, when it starts to, oddly enough, feel pleasurable, that's in my mind worth doing, and there is where you find the success. But you what's your pain tolerance? You want to do this? What's your pain tolerance?
Yeah, I think that's a nice idea. I actually was just having a conversation with a comedian where I was sort of questioning what is it like, why am I doing what I'm doing? But one of the things that I said, and I think that's a normal kind of thing at times, but one of the things I said is, but you know what I like to do is I like to write every day. And 10 years ago, when I started writing every day, I would not have said that.
Right.
About 5 years ago, maybe I would have said that. But I certainly say it now. Like, I'm not even sure what I want to write, like if it's worth writing, but I know that I want to do the writing.
It's the act of doing it.
Yes. So the pain has become pleasure, and now I'm just trying to find which way do I guide it to an outcome that's going to be beneficial to me and hopefully to others.
Yeah, beneficial to you and productive. I think you're right. It's pushing through that, and then it does become pleasurable. People ask me all the time, like, "No, why do you think of these crazy different ideas? Aren't you happy enough?" I'm like, and actually, it causes me pain.
No doubt.
Because I'm like, I can't. I'm like, oh no, I think this might be a good idea.
Yeah.
And I really do respond to it like that, like shit.
Yeah.
I don't need another one. I don't need this aggravation in my life. I'm like, set up the meeting with the ferry company. I want all the ferries lost. I've done that.
No, I get it.
And it is painful to a degree, but it's also very pleasurable.
Yeah, it's what you're describing is that you're focused on process, and then good outcomes happen. But they're not guaranteed to happen. No. But you have to enjoy the process of thinking about it. Norm, thank you so much for letting me hijack your podcast gear.
Anytime, man.
Tech.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having us. Thanks for being here. And I can't wait to see you next week in Dubai.
That'd be great. Cheers.
Thank you for listening. Don't forget to visit petermcgraw.org for more information about our guest, show notes, and social media links. If you've enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and share with others. Join Dr. Peter McGraw next week for another fun, fascinating conversation on I'm Not Joking.